welcome back everybody to our part B of our conversation with Karen Johnson. And this time I'm happy to introduce Lisa Maynard, who is the director or the administrator at McCormick Home. And if you recall, in our last podcast, we were discussing with Karen about the Ritz Gala and the positive fundraising projects that we had worked on and what our successful accomplishments had been. And we left that podcast with a bit of a cliffhanger, talking about what the next Ritz Gala would be fundraising for. And so I'm really excited to bring together both Karen Johnson, Director of McCormick Dementia Services, and again, Lisa Maynard, the Administrator of McCormick Home, to talk about the Learning and Development Center. So welcome, Karen. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining me. So I really have limited knowledge about the Learning and Development Center, but I know that it has been underway for some time, not a long time, but a little bit of time. And so I'm wondering, maybe Lisa, can you give us a little bit of information about it? And actually, before you go to that, maybe just share a little bit about yourself, because there may be some individuals, because you're relatively new to McCormick, who actually have not met you yet. So maybe if you could share a little bit about yourself and
Sure.
and then into the next.
Okay. Well, I'm Lisa, and I have been in long-term care for 28 years. I was with a private organization for some time and joined McCormick about a year ago, almost, not there yet, and really happy to be here with the organization.
Well, I can honestly say we're happy to have you too.
Thank you.
I think you've been making some really, really positive changes and helping, just bring the staff together, and things have really been growing and coming together. And so, we're thrilled.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
So maybe you can share a little bit about the Learning and Development Center. What is it?
So the Learning and Development Center came about with an opportunity last year for funds from the government for education and to develop a space. So we were able to put together a proposal for the Learning and Development Center with our Learning and Development lead and CEO, Steve Crawford. And it includes a learning lab, so a learning and practice lab with mannequins and setup like a long-term care home, bedroom or bathroom tub space, and a dining space. And then we have an education center as well, some shared office space, and whatever we need to host our folks that are in that space.
And so when you talk about all of these spaces or these rooms, what's the purpose?
Well, the purpose is for us to be able to develop our staff, their skills and their competencies in different things for caring for the residents of the home and dementia services, students, our preceptors, volunteers as well.
I'm wondering, in terms of just thinking about the landscape within the long-term care space and within the community too, I know more and more people, when they are coming either to the day program or coming to the home, that their care needs are higher, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Karen, can you help elaborate on some of that from a community perspective?
Yeah. So this is a really timely opportunity, because just there was a lot of staff turnover in our industry, in long-term care, healthcare, everywhere. There's a lot of staff turnover, and particularly in the healthcare field, we are short staff. And when I say we, I'm meaning the global. Everybody is short. So one of the ways that we know to recruit and retain employees is training, affording them opportunities to skill, maintain their skills or to skill up. But because there has been this drive for recruitment, we have a whole bunch of new employees. We have employees that also have just been slogging through the pandemic. We want to give them the training and the skills that are really going to elevate them. This will impact definitely the long-term care side, because, Lisa and I have had some really great conversations around the expectations from the ministry of long-term care, like the demands, the expectations of long-term care is more than ever. And then in the community side, we do have clients who attend the day program. If you saw them in our day program, you'd be shocked to know that they were actually living in a home in the community, because they're just the level of care and the fact that caregivers are expected to care for them. And just like us, community care, there's sometimes not enough staff or even the skill sets of those staff. So this is a really great opportunity for us to take a space that we have here on site at McCormick. It's undeveloped. It's sort of our East Wing storage. It's going to get cleaned up. And as Lisa said, it's going to be beautiful. Mm-hmm. It's to actually have a simulation suite, like Lisa said, so there'll be a mannequin. I think so nurses can do IV
practice assessments, practice doing skills like IV therapy and things that we don't do typically, because that would be something in hospital. But the demand is greater to do those types of things in long-term care, to care for people and to keep them from going to hospital, because that, we all know, is a spot of struggle for the healthcare system. So one of our quality indicators for Ontario Health and our QIP, our quality improvement plan in all of long-term care, is to avoid hospital visits, emergency department visits. And one of the ways we can do that is to learn skills or to relearn skills and become really confident and competent in what those skills are, so that we can provide those services here in the home. We know it's difficult for residents to go to the hospital. They're staying in the hallway. We're still doing hallway health care. And it's better for them to stay home here and for us to look after them if we can. So this would really be beneficial to that.
Can I just add? So, because we've talked about this, so if the long-term care staff are able to perform certain functions here, where let's say maybe now you might have a nurse come in from the community.
That's right.
To do a procedure on a resident here in the home. If the home is able to do this, that means that nurse can stay in the community.
That's right.
So from the community side, that's a bonus. That's a huge win. So when we have something like a learning and development center, it's not just going to improve the lives of our residents and our clients through the education that we're going to provide our staff, but it's also going to improve the lives of so many other people. Imagine less residents having to go to a long-term or having to go to a hospital, more nurses able to provide care inside people's homes. It's just this ripple effect that's going to happen when we have this amazing learning and development center.
So there's so much in what you both said, and I want to add just a small anecdote in there. I had a conversation with a friend of ours who's an EMS person, and he shared that most of their time is spent either dealing with mental health in the community or picking individuals up from long-term care. Mm-hmm. And so, knowing a little bit about the Learning and Development Center, I see the domino effect of how positive that can be for not just McCormick, but beyond McCormick. But I do want to come back to the McCormick part for a moment, because I think about, from our staff's perspective, and how rewarding, I don't know, is that rewarding the right word? I know, part of the strategic plan is to make this the place where people want to come to work. Mm-hmm. And so it would seem to me that this would be a good way to help attract and retain. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. This isn't an opportunity that a lot of people can even take advantage of, because they don't have the space, the physical space, to be able to do something, whether it's even the land, to build something new on. To be able to invest in our staff in this way, residents, residents, hopefully, and volunteers as well. We're hoping to have a space where people can still learn and grow. but other places, other homes don't have even the ability to make this happen, which is super exciting for us to be able to offer that to our folks here at the home.
So I'm going to come back to the partner piece, because in the other things you were speaking about, talking about procedures that can be done in the home. I know for both of you, you're far more familiar with what that means or what that looks like. And I would suspect that there are individuals who are going to be watching this who won't have the same insight that you do when you're speaking about procedures. But there may be families or individuals who have loved ones that are in long-term care. And in their mind, I'm sure, as for me, I'm thinking, well, what kind of procedures? What does that mean? And what do you mean you're not able to? Why not? Sort of some of the assumptions that people make. I think they assume or think long-term care is the same as, or very close to the same as, being in hospital. But there are obvious differences. I don't know, maybe Lisa, you can share some of the differences between those two.
Yeah, so the long-term care home is meant to care for people at a stable state. So they have health conditions, but they're in a relatively stable state. So we're able to provide them with medications and therapies. But this is their home. They require 24-hour care, and we want to make it as good as possible. We don't provide services like, we do get x-rays to come in, but like a more in-depth x-ray for a possible fracture, for instance. IV therapies is something that we don't do often, and we have to rely on our community nurses to come in if we need to start an IV. We can maintain an IV, we can discontinue an IV, but starting an IV is a little trickier and not something that we do on a regular basis. So that's an example of something that would be something we may be able to do in the future with the Learning and Development Center.
Actually, can I just also add?
Yeah.
So delirium, delirium, so it's a person's change in status, and it could be caused by something as simple as having a urinary tract infection. So we know statistically that delirium is misdiagnosed and underdiagnosed, both in long-term care, in community, in hospital. So that if we can provide, I know every time we provide education on delirium, staff get really excited about it because it's like mind-blowing, because it's such a simple thing, but can have such a huge effect if it's not, diagnosed and treated quickly.
So for those that don't know, what is delirium?
So it's basically like an imbalance. It's things that happen with chemicals in the brain. It could be related to medications. So maybe having too much of a medication, not enough. Like as we get older, our bodies don't metabolize medications as they should. So with proper pharmacy support, you start to take less medication. Some seniors or older adults, they don't know that. So they continue to take their medication amount that they've taken for the last 25 years, and meanwhile, that's actually, they're developing a toxicity. So then they may end up having a delirium. They present with, they're lethargic, they're sleeping a lot, suddenly there's just a change in their health status. Or somebody can have a bladder infection, and all of a sudden they're hallucinating, they're agitated, they're just totally different from one day to the next. And it can eventually lead to being septic, which then can lead to dying. So delirium is really, really important. And it's one of those things that we would, educate the staff on, because it can be easily identified. So for example,
Is it easily treated?
it can be depending on what the cause is. If it's a bladder infection, you get your treatment through antibiotics.
Right.
If it's medications, it's a medication review and making sure the individual is taking the right medications. But that's just, for me, like one of a basic that, unfortunately, when we have someone and we have care partners who they kind of feel relieved because their person is really quiet and sleeps a lot at home and they're not causing any problems and they're not demanding. Then we go, this is not normal. This is a very different change. So means that maybe they're actually having a delirium, and it's called a hypoactive delirium, which means they get really tired and sleepy, and you shouldn't fall asleep halfway through a sentence, and that means there's something wrong. So we want to make sure that staff are able to identify if there's changes happening. It's a flag and say, hey, you know what? Maybe it's a delirium. Just as an example, it goes, so it's not just the physical practicing of lifts and transfers and IV therapy. It's so much more than that. It's assessment skills, like you mentioned earlier.
I'm wondering, that was a really great...
Sorry, I'm so jazzed about this. We're going to get a learning development center.
Awesome. And as you were talking, I'm thinking to myself, too many thoughts to verbalize all at the same time. But when I think about how that... So I'm going to use, and frankly, I'm sure it's anyone, but when they gain that knowledge, specifically staff, and especially when somebody's living in the community, them being able to flag that maybe in a more timely way than not.
Honestly, the number of staff, the number of clients we find in the day program who have bladder infections it's so high.
Really?
And because the symptoms don't present when you're an older adult, they present differently versus when you're mid and early stage or early age. So because we see the changes, we see the person is not their normal self. So staff, we've trained them where they go, this isn't the way Joe normally is. I'm gonna call their wife or husband, and find out, has something changed? We can do a urine dip. And then sure enough, we find out there's a urinary tract infection, which then go to the doctor, get your antibiotics, and wow, guess what? You didn't end up having a raging delirium where you fell, you broke a hip, and you ended up in the hospital. It's all, this is
like prevention.
People don't realize,
Definitely.
Education.
Yeah. It's a new way of thinking in so many, well, maybe it's not new, but I think just general public are conditioned to think, I'm not well, I see the doctor, I get a medicine, I get better. And keep following that path as opposed to maybe being more proactive in some of the things that we can do. And especially when you're dealing with senior folks, although I know they're not always that senior either. There are individuals who are not even senior in terms of what we determine a senior citizen type person. So when I think you might even have a story of somebody who you, not on the, maybe it was on the, I don't know what the diagnosis was, but somebody who was recently trained, who you were able to flag that individual. I feel like it just happened recently where there was a recent training that took place, and because of that one of the staff in the day program was able to say, something's happening here. And maybe I was speaking to Becky about it, and
quite possibly. I apologize. Yeah.
No, well, anyways, I think your example illustrates it really well, just the same. I'm wondering, so the learning, I'm thinking about the Learning and Development Center and how awesome it is to have the space to do this. But does training not happen now? And maybe we can also just touch on, because I know there's been some new changes within McCormick Care Group in terms of the thinking around all of this. And maybe you guys can share on that. That was a pretty vague question.
Yeah,
I understood where you were going with this one this time, so go ahead.
I'm hoping I get this right.
Our coordinator.
Yes, so we have our learning and development coordinator now, new position, along with our volunteer and student experience coordinator. Yeah. So having these two roles available to work with the staff is amazing. It's so great. And to be able to have that space where they can hopefully go and take over and really start doing more education in person. We recently had a infection control education in this room, and we have to take over a resident space for that, to happen. And we do try to keep it down to a minimum because we don't want to take over that space, but there isn't designated education space around. So we do a lot of education online, but definitely in person is far more effective. So
Yeah, like
that's one thing we'll get from this.
education happens. It happens every year, all the time. But this is more strategic. So it's not just ticking the box. Like, yep, we've done our fire safety training. We've done our donning and doffing gown. PP, personal protective equipment. This is more of a staff member can identify. You know what, we're struggling with this in this area, and that learning development corner says, great, let me go get some information and let me see if I can pull something together for you and do like quick team huddle training. So it was harder to have the capacity to do that. And here we have this person, she's excellent at her job, and she's really set the stage for us with this learning development center. And I have to give her credit. I mean, she really she had a vision for what this learning development center, what it's going to look like. Yeah. And it's really mind-blowing. Like, it's beautiful. I never would have come up with that.
Stuff. Yeah, state-of-the-art stuff. And we have a nurse practitioner who's working with the staff now, one-on-one, as she goes about her duties on a day. And she'll be able to come down to that center in future state. I want it to be right now, but it's not built yet. Yeah. And she'll be able to show them if we don't have, say, a certain case where they want to learn how to do a certain kind of assessment or skill, like she can bring them down to the mannequin and set it up so that it mimics that case. And then they can learn that the staff will be able to learn that assessment. They can reproduce it and be able to learn on the spot. And hopefully, my goal would be for them to have an opportunity to do that on a regular basis, to keep those skills up and be really confident with what they're doing.
Can I also, add in, like, because you had mentioned earlier, Lisa, around volunteers and I think families. So this is the other thing, like, this isn't just for staff. Like, and this is part of the whole philosophy change that we've really embraced here at McCormick with this new strategic plan. It's really seeing investment in our volunteers. They are members of the team. It's not just someone who's going to be social and we're just going to porter residents or clients to places. They are literally a member of the team. And if we're going to expect them to be that, we have to give them the tools and we have to treat them like they really are members of the team. And the same thing with families.
Families is the same, yeah. We're looking at the Caregivers Ontario program and really trying. We have a lot of families that are involved in their loved ones' care already, which is fantastic. But even providing them with opportunities to learn about whatever it is, we're not there yet, but we're doing an assessment, and there may be things they want to know more about in order to support their loved one. And this is another opportunity to be able to do that, which is awesome.
And doesn't that speak volumes that a long-term care home, please let us train you, let us embrace you as your team members. Like, that just, to me, like, I think that just speaks trust and warmth and welcome to the McCormick family.
Yeah, I agree. And having, people have heard me already speak about my father-in-law who was here for a period of time, but there are several things that I know we could have used training on. And now I was lucky and would go to somebody and say, oh, I'm trying to get them from here to here in the car and the this and the that. And I think we could do it better. I'm not going to put my husband under the bus here.
Don't let him watch.
Yeah. But it's true. Like, there are, as part of the care team at the end of the day, right? Because you want to know, you want to be as knowledgeable as you can. I would think most people want to be as knowledgeable as they can at any rate. And I think that just benefits everyone. Makes for better work days, better home days, better family days, better all the way around, for sure.
Absolutely.
I lost track of, so I wanted to go back to So the idea of having somebody who is responsible for learning and development and somebody who is responsible for volunteer coordination, independent roles in a long-term care home is pretty unique. Is that accurate?
It's fair. Yeah, it's pretty unique to have those two as full-time roles dedicated to that, to those items.
Not somebody having to carve out time on the corner of their desk because their primary responsibility is over here.
That's right. My experience is that people have that as a side of the desk job. So they are responsible for education, but they're also responsible for something else. And so your time is divided and you get things done and the box is checked, as you mentioned, but it's not maybe the best of education.
It's the best with what they have to work with.
Absolutely.
Yes,
people are doing the best they can, and I see people work really, really hard to get all these things done and do the best things for what the staff need or people need at the time. But it's really awesome to have those two dedicated roles. And
when we were doing the strategic planning, like those two roles were identified as essential. They needed to be created. And if we're looking at, like we've spoken about the learning and development piece, but the volunteer and student engagement coordinator role is also essential because how many students, first of all, we love having students at McCormick. We absolutely love to be able to shape people into eventually future employees, right? And to make that happen means there should be some management of their experience. So that's part of this role. Also engaging with different academic institutions. So we get students from a broader variety of schools. We also, with the volunteers, every place lost a ton of volunteers through the pandemic because they couldn't walk through the doors, and then volunteers just retired. And so everybody's competing for volunteers. So if we have this dedicated person who, like, this is their bread and butter, is let's get volunteers through the door. And again, I want to give kudos to this this person in their role. She has just blown it out of the water for us, I think, with getting volunteers through a door, because we can't do what we do. We can't be who we are without our volunteers and our students.
I can speak to the fact that several volunteers noticed the focus and attention that they're now receiving. Not that they weren't receiving focus or attention. Again, in the past, I'm not trying really hard not to be critical of any one individual, but when you're, again, doing it on the corner of your desk, it's really difficult to get all things done to, the highest capacity. And so, but from the volunteers I've spoken with, they're really pleased to feel this warm, welcoming, more family environment and to be knowledgeable. And, I know we plan to have a segment on volunteers at McCormick in the future as well. But what I do know is that the training or the education, the work that it takes to become a volunteer is no different almost than becoming staff. From all the training that has to happen to the medical tests that have to take place to, it's at 222, I'm sure. I don't know all those pieces, but I know that it sounds quite extensive. And so, for individuals who want to volunteer and invest their time with us to help and support, then something like the Learning and Development Center, to be able to properly invest back in them, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's a really beautiful thing. I really love, so I'm going to move away from the staff component, but before I do, I want to say, I've been in fundraising for a long time now. And so often when we think about what we plan to fundraise for, we think about external factors. We think about what's the shiny new object, or what's the piece of equipment, or what can we build. And although I know we are, in essence, building, redeveloping space, but the philosophy of this particular Learning and Development Center is, like, it sounds and feels more to me like we're getting it right. We're making sure the people who are on the front line of delivering the care are skilled and knowledgeable to deliver more enhanced and better care, which is exactly why our foundation exists, is to help support McCormick to do these things, to support enhanced care. So it's super exciting for foundation. I know our board's really excited about this project as well. And so I think, on that first kind of piece, the being able to train staff, enhance their skills, level up, if you will. I just had a Mario vision eating a mushroom in my head.
Yeah.
But and anyways, sidebar, that's my grandson who recently shared with me that's how Mario works. But at any rate, when we think about from like the other component of it, of training, like with our partners and whether it's the student partners, whether it's other healthcare partners, what does that look like?
Well, this is also going to be a space where we can bring researchers in, for example. So we've had researchers do projects here for years and years, and we love our collaborations and relationships with Western, Fanshawe, not having always the best space to do it. So this gives us an opportunity where we actually have a space that they can do their research, research with residents, research with clients, research with staff. So there's a space, because our goal whenever we do research, it's to benefit McCormick just as much as it's to benefit the institution that researcher is from. And that's one of the bonuses when we're a part of a research project. It means we actually get to see the data like before it's published. So if we see things that we can tweak, we can change right away, we can do it. So I get that's one area I get excited of sort of a partnership or relationship with other institutions. It's with our different research.
And do you see an opportunity for other long-term care homes or facilities this way?
I do. I think it's an opportunity. If we've got the space, why not? Why not, invite other people in to learn as well? Like it just benefits more people if we can. Everybody's goal, like I mentioned, is to avoid the emergency department if possible. So if we can help upskill people in other homes, why not?
And sometimes if a training is being offered, you sometimes need a minimum number of staff to be.
True.
And I know in the past we've from a day program perspective, we've opened it up to the adult day program network in the Southwest, and we had employees from a variety of day programs come in for a training because they needed a minimum of 18 people in order for that trainer to come in to do the training. Wow, we will actually have the most beautiful environment to be able to say, to long-term care, day programs, other organizations, like we have space. We can.
We're going to offer training. We have X amount of openings because it is difficult still to backfill people. Like if you want to give them the time off the floor to come to a training, you need somebody to be there to fill their shoes. So that's the trick these days. And in needing these minimum numbers, you need to fill the shoes somehow, and you might not be able to get the minimum number of people in for training. So it just makes sense to be able to open it up, and how exciting. I think it's such a great opportunity. And we have a huge network here in London Middlesex. We get together quite regular for meetings, and everybody's in the same boat. So
it really the more I'm listening to it, it really fits that McCormick as a leader in long-term and dementia care kind of space, but true to form. It's also about bringing people with them.
Well, our success is dependent on others' success. Their success is our success. Like we're all in the system. But we don't function in isolation. So why wouldn't we? Our organization is 150 years old. We have impacted the London community for 150 years. This is just another way that we're going to do it. And it's not just the residents, but it's also I think of all the employees, volunteers, future healthcare professionals. Like it's all, and that's going to be a big part of it is McCormick.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm envisioning a McCormick stamp on their diploma.
Let's get one.
We can make that happen.
Yeah.
I'm just as you were talking, Karen, about the I think about the students coming through, and certainly I think, Lisa, you and I also had a conversation about the value of having volunteers, or not volunteers, but students doing their placements, and then going through that training. Maybe I'm speaking in, like a little bit.
I'm going to get this.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, with our there's opportunities out there. The ministry has provided us with some funding opportunities and things like that. So we have taken advantage of the preceptor training program.
Yeah.
And we've been able to train a number of preceptors, which are our current staff, PSWs.
For those that maybe aren't familiar with the concept
Preceptor?
of a preceptor, maybe
A
just
mentor, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
So a mentor who's going to be with that person and guide them through. So the staff, or the student is paired up with a staff member who's gone through the preceptor program, which is just to guide them on how to be a good preceptor or mentor and provide a really good placement experience for the students. Typically or historically, students would come in, they would be paired with a staff member, just whoever's available on the floor today, they're paired with that staff member and they follow them around and learn that way.
Right.
And in my experience, it's not always the best because they're not really necessarily shown unless you have someone who naturally knows what to do to give somebody a really good experience. So this preceptor program has provided the staff with the skills, and then we've been able to, through our learning and development and our student and volunteer experience coordinator, they've developed an orientation program. They've paired the students and staff together. They evaluate it. They've reviewed the program from both sides. And the students, we're getting a lot of positive feedback from them on this preceptor program and their experience here at McCormick. And they go back to school. They talk about their experience here, and it's very different than experiences in other places. So they know that they're getting a good placement here at the home. So we've also been able to hire, I don't know the exact number, I'm going to say about 5 or 6 people that have gone through the program, and we've been able to hire on here at the home. So it's amazing. That's what we want. They've had their orientation and training, and they know the residents and they know the home, and we're able to hire them on. Like, what a great way to recruit people.
Well, it sounds like the best of both worlds. I mean, they've had the opportunity to spend time.
Check us out.
Is this really where I want to be?
Yeah.
And then likewise, staff have been able to determine they're a fit. Yes, these guys are going to be great.
And how nice for the staff who are the preceptors. Like again, there's been an investment in their education, in what they know, and then to be given this special role to and like, how amazing to know that, they could be, they are demonstrating, like, this is what you should be doing. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I should add to that, because normally I did mention about the shoes. We got to fill shoes to do education.
Oh, yes.
With the preceptorship, we take them off the floor for a little bit so that they can spend dedicated time with that student. So that is the key. That is the gold star, to be able to spend that time with the student and not have an assignment on the floor working with residents at the time. They get to know the space and where the tools are and supplies and all that kind of stuff, and what the routine is. And then together with their preceptor, they go onto the floor to
what a great thing, because
get hands-on.
I know the number of people, whether it's in the day program or in the home, there's not a lot of staff to go around for all of the folks that require care and or services, and so being able to do that without feeling the pressure of feeling like you're ignoring your primary focus, being the resident or whomever. What a great thing to be able to, for both, because one feels like they might be interluding or intruding, and so the preceptor doesn't feel like their attention is divided. Yeah, that's really good.
But I also want to give credit where credit is due, because that comes from the top. So that's leadership saying, you know what, this is our priority. So if you're in this role today, you're in this role today.
Yeah.
We're not going to pull you. You know, you're not. So there's just, it's the buy-in from, like, I'm one of Lisa's biggest fans. So I'm just being full self-disclosure here. But you know, it really is like, it comes from the top. Like you got it. Like you see it, you know the value. So you're promoting it. We're doing it. It's amazing. It's a beautiful thing.
So if there was, I'm coming back into the community factor, it just seems to me that there's so much opportunity. We talked about the student volunteers, the other academic institutions, the research piece. I don't know how clearly we talked about the fact that it is like a simulation lab, and maybe you guys can share a little bit about what that means in terms of like what kinds of simulations are you going to do or can you do, or and maybe that's too big of a question.
No, like it can be simple things like transfers. Like how do you get someone up out of bed? How do you 1 or 2 person transfer, or even on and off? There's going to be a toilet not working. There'll be no water. There will be no plumbing. But this room literally has a bed, a toilet, a tub with a ceiling lift.
Yeah.
It'll have also a table and chairs for, I think, the dining room.
Yep.
So like there's a lot of skills required if you are helping somebody with their activities of daily living. So things, transfers, safe lifts. A lot of this is required regardless for ministry, for legislative purposes.
Right.
But why wouldn't we want to make sure everybody's at 110% on that?
Oh, absolutely. It made me think. So, even from a staff perspective, maybe people have received training on some of these other types of apparatuses, but not the ones that are like ours.
Right. Some, they're similar in the way they work, but people buy different products, and we're going to have, to start, we'll have what we have, right? What we have here in the home. So, but to your point about people being trained and coming through, we've had a lot of, again, promotion from the ministry to get people into the field, and we've had a lot of PSWs come through in different and varying ways, and not a lot of experience, right? They haven't had the opportunity to have experience. So this is a really great opportunity to provide that education in a simulated way. If they're not familiar with how they can provide care to a particular resident with certain conditions, or that they just may not be comfortable with and are a little bit different than others they're experienced with, they can go down and learn that skill, and then where they're not so stressed out because they're working with someone in a way that they can do it comfortably and get their confidence built up in a safe way.
And additionally, one of the things that we've done in the day program side is we actually train staff with the lifts, with the staff in the lifts as well. So they actually experience, wow, this is what it feels like when I'm in a sling.
Cool idea.
And just
hanging.
like because then it puts everything into perspective of like why you go at the pace you do, why you talk the way like you say the things you're saying to the resident or to the client, because you're very, very vulnerable,
right,
when you're in a sling and you are being lifted into a tub or lifted into a bed. So I'm not kidding. Like it's a fantastic learning experience. So, but from our end, it's hard to do that because we have clients 24/7.
Yes.
And everything's being used. And I think the same thing with the home side. So having this space will also give us that opportunity for experiential plus.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's a really brilliant idea.
It's done in other areas, but again, to have the space is rare.
Yes.
So like we know, in my mind, it's a best practice for training. It's just hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, coming back to just having the availability of that space, having these types of equipment, the opportunity. I'm going to segue here. I have another question about this. And then in terms of the actual training, who provides that training? Like, where does it come from? Is it ourselves that create these programs and training programs? Do we outsource some of that? What does that look like?
I think that's dependent upon the training itself.
Yeah.
So it may be internal, as I mentioned with the nurse practitioner, doing assessment skills or those basic nursing type skills, just to make sure people know what they're listening for when they're doing a chest assessment and those types of things. It may be that our learning and development coordinator is reaching out to somebody else to bring them in to do training for us. So that I think it's dependent upon the training that's happening.
Sort of sounds like it's leveraging expertises from various areas wherever that.
It could be internal, it can be external. We've just recently invested in gentle persuasive approach coach training. So we have 2 GPA coaches, and we haven't had that kind of resource in this building for a while, just with turnover and time.
And what does that person do?
So basically it's a 1-day training on the gentle persuasive approach. So understanding responsive behaviors, symptoms in dementia, personhood. How do you work with someone using a personhood framework and model? It's kind of the goal. It's the fundamental, I would say, for dementia care and working with older adults, with anybody really. But it's like a standard, like everybody should have this. And we now have 2 coaches. And so that's one of our goals is we want to skill up everybody with this gentle persuasive approaches. And we happen to have 2 in-house coaches to do it.
Frontline staff that are training, they're training everybody else.
Right, they've become the trainers.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. So if there was, I'll ask both of you this question, and you can decide who would like to go first.
I don't have a coin.
Yeah. It's not that hard of a question.
Oh, okay.
I feel like we've been...
Don't you sound disappointed?
Oh, okay.
So we've been chatting for a little while now, and I can't help but think of how I feel like we've only scratched the surface of what this can mean, not just to our organization, but to our community and so on and so on. It really is the beginning of training future, healthcare providers, not just at McCormick, but beyond as well, and listening to all the best practices that you guys have been talking about and how this can scale up and move forward. It's big. It's a big idea. And the fact that there are staff who are dedicated to help bring these things to reality, I feel is really important, because it means things won't fall behind. Like, it's great to have an idea, but not only do the ideas exist, but the people to support the idea in its execution also exists. And, ideas are great, but if you can't execute, they mean nothing. So this I think is a really important component. So having only scratched the surface of all of the things, if you could, I know, Lisa, you want this now, and
yesterday.
Yeah, we're just getting going on the whole thing. But if there was one thing that you thought that this was going to, like, the immediate impact that this will have, and maybe a longer term impact that you think that you hope to see come from this project.
You get to go first.
So can I?
You can.
Okay, so immediately it's skilling our staff up. So I'm going to speak from the day program side.
Is that me? Sorry.
We had probably over 50% turnover in our staff through the pandemic.
Wow.
And a lot of new employees, like fresh, green. And so they come to us with the basics, and we want to be leaders in dementia care, which means we have to give them extra skill sets. We have to skill them up. And it's been very difficult in getting out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Hasn't been a lot of time. There's been issues with filling shifts, like everybody, staffing has been an issue. So it's been very difficult to have the time or the money to focus on upskilling.
Yeah.
And now we can. Like that is where I am so super jazzed that, we're going to have super confident staff in not only how they're going to provide care, but they're going to do it in a way that's dementia friendly, and it's person centered, and it's relationship centered. So I see that as sort of an immediate sort of win. And then longer term, from my perspective, again, my community hat on, is the impact on health services out in the community. So if we can stop people from going to the emerge department, that's a huge win. If we can stop people from breaking and falling and breaking a hip and ending up, prematurely institutionalized or prematurely, ending up in a situation they didn't need to be in or so soon. So that to me is, again, sort of a longer term thing.
It makes me think about your comment earlier that we're all part of a system.
100%.
And so from that perspective, that system component, being able to intervene and support such that it creates more capacity, is that the right word?
You've nailed it. It creates more capacity. Like I think of all the care partners in the community that they don't have a PSW who's supposed to be scheduled show up at their door because they're dealing with something else, or the nurse doesn't call, the nurse doesn't show up because there is no nurse because they're sick or they just don't have enough. So whatever we can do to influence the system, like I'm there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Let's get our nurses here in the home doing all that extra nursey stuff that they can do here so that the community nurses can do their nursey stuff out in the community.
Yeah.
I'm just having all these nurses cringing at me right now.
Yes. It's more than nursey stuff. We know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, the short-term win is the same. Like it's that upscaling our staff and really building their confidence and skills and abilities. But I think it's like long-term, I hope people are as excited about this opportunity as we are. Like I'm super excited that, we can have a place where people can continue to learn and grow their skills. I mean, you talked about this at the beginning about the level of care of folks that you're seeing in the day program, and we're seeing in the long-term care home, and people that are on our wait list or come as an application to the home that require skills that we just don't have, or behaviors maybe that we just can't manage. Like it's just with our current population, our current level of staffing, which again, the ministry is investing in, and we are gaining staff, but there's only so many out there right now. So really being ready for the next, level of care that we are likely to see, and really being able to provide amazing care here. And people in their home, I talked to residents today about the home and their experience in the home and how can we make things better. And they're happy.
Yeah.
They're happy. They're happy here. They really had no suggestions for me, but I think there is things that we can do to make things better. And if we have really great skills and we're using our nursing to its best degree, and we have nurses that are going to the hospital, it's a little bit more exciting and sexy maybe than long-term care, but if we can keep them excited about being here and learning more, and maybe we can take on more higher care folks or that require some different skills. We can say, okay, let us upskill. Do you have somebody that could train us? And maybe we can do that and take on some of those other challenges that the greater long-term care doesn't have yet. And long-term, hopefully that will be something that we do have and that we can practice and become competent in.
Long-term is probably shorter term than we think. as I think about the demographics of individuals and what we know to expect in terms of people aging, and knowing how living in the community longer with other support services, but then when they do come to long-term care, their care needs are higher. Often because maybe something has happened in the home as well, and so then that precipitates an emergency kind of situation, and so then your team is dealing with all of those. I just see all positive, good things that can come from this, and I guess it really is a new way of thinking about, and it is thinking out of the box to take us out of the status quo, transforming into something that needs to transform, but being solution orientated, and really taking a positive approach. Sorry, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I think there's things that we haven't even considered yet that will come. Like if we're open to the possibilities, I think there's stuff out there we haven't even thought about yet that this would be, we would be like, oh, hey, we have space. We've got a simulation lab. Like we've got these things and we can do that. We can facilitate that. So, I hope that's where we go.
This is our field of dreams. If we build it,
there
they
you
will
go.
come.
All the baseball players are coming.
I love it. Yeah. So I'm really excited because the Ritz Gala this year is going to be focusing on raising funds for this Learning and Development Center, and so I know that it's a big project for our foundation to take on. It's probably our first campaign since the building of McCormick Home or McCormick Care Group some time ago now. The project overall, I understand, is about $1 million, and our foundation's looking to raise about half of that. And so our goal for this year at the Ritz Gala is half of that half. And we've had a lot of, as we discussed earlier, a lot of really generous supporters in our community, and who really believe in McCormick and believe in the legacy, those 150 years of community support. So this is a really exciting time for all of us. I want to thank you both for coming, but just before I go, any closing thoughts about this, about the center?
I wish it was here.
I think for anyone who is going to donate for this, like to this cause, that investment is just, it's going to affect so many people. Like I can't even begin to describe that.
Exponential.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a great word.
Can't put a price tag on it, but 500,000 would be nice, at least. Just kidding. I'm kidding. No, but seriously, I think people need to understand this. This is such a huge project, and it's just going to affect so many lives. Yeah.
Well, I know we'll be talking more about it as time goes on, because, like I say, it's such
We can't stop.
Well, and it's so big and it's multi-layered, and there's so many people that it impacts and affects, and so we'll, as we continue to build that case for support, we'll start to break it down bit by bit and explore all those opportunities and what investing in something like this means. So, Karen, thank you for coming today and joining us on this conversation. Lisa, thank you also for sharing your thoughts and insights. And to everybody watching, thank you for joining us on another episode of our Dementia Journey podcast series. And if you are interested in more information, I'm sure there's going to be links below that you can click. And I thank you again for joining us. Take care.